Hi family, Pastor Trent here with an update for you on how we're going to move forward as a church over the next couple months. There's been a lot of communication from our governor, from other leaders, from the president even about houses of worship. And so what are we going to do? I think this is a time where we need to receive Ephesians 4, where we need a blueprint for the church, which is to ask, what has God called us to? And I don't know what other churches have been called to, but I do know that God has called us into a diverse community of disciples, that we would follow Jesus and that the very life of God by his Spirit would live in our fellowship and then produce life multiplying so that we might even serve and live for the good of our city. And what I can tell you is that's happening. That's happening right now. I'm actually super encouraged with where our church is at. Even in contrast to last fall or last spring, I feel like we are growing. We're growing spiritually, growing up in Christ. We're growing numerically, even in a pandemic. And no, I don't mean Facebook page views or something like that. I mean people. People are leaning in, neighbors of mine, friends of yours, interested in a community of disciples, of people who are learning to follow Jesus. And so that means that in every sense, we are not closed. Our church is not closed. And listen, I love Sunday worship so much. I've poured blood and sweat and tears and lots of energy into shaping a worship environment on Sundays over the last couple years. It's a huge value for me. But if you are hanging around and asking the question, when can we have church again? You're missing the point. We're not closed. Would you, on the other hand, embrace the opportunity of this? If you're just asking when can we have church again, this might be the time to begin asking other questions. Like, who can I invite into my discipleship group who's now curious about following Jesus? Or what friends, neighbors, coworkers are willing to have spiritual conversations now because of the circumstances of our lives? Or perhaps what needs do I see in my family or neighborhood that I could meet or others could meet? There is opportunity for us to live on mission now. And I want to encourage you to take it. I'm hoping that when this is all said and done and we actually get to meet back together face to face, that there are people that I have never met, but that you have been discipling over the last few months and in the coming months. So, in this season, we won't make perfect decisions. But I am going to do my best to ensure that our decisions are rooted in wisdom and not reaction. They're not driven by a political agenda, but they're considerate of our community and our place here in South Minneapolis. So please know that my door is open. I want to talk with you. I want to process with you. I want to pastor you. And if you've got anxiety, if you've got angst, if you've got logistical questions, whatever you're walking through, I'm here. And my lines are open, okay? As your pastor, let me exhort you to two things, two comments here today. The first is logistical, and the second is spiritual. Let's get to logistics, all right? The logistics of moving forward for us are that we are going to move forward in a phase-by-phase approach, potentially moving forward and backward over the next 6 to 12 months as the conditions change. The email that you received with this video has 5 phases to it. The first of which we are in is a stay-in-place phase, and then there's a communal worship phase where groups can gather, groups of up to 10. There's a hybrid phase where we can get creative about different places to meet, potentially and likely outside. There's a strict corporate worship phase where we get entrance back into Wilder and can meet there, but it'll look very different. And then there's a full and unrestricted corporate worship, the back to normal that we are hoping for. Now, listen, we built a plan that's got indicators and adjustments for all those different phases. And if you're the kind of person who wants all the details, just let me know and I can make that available to you. But for where I'm sitting and how I understand the situation, we currently are straddling phase 1 and 2. the stay-at-home phase and the communal worship phase. And here's why I say that. Because even though the governor has allowed for houses of worship to reopen to a certain degree, and groups of 10 or less can meet following strict social distancing protocols, what hasn't yet happened is that our county and our state has not yet any of the initial gating criteria of the CDC, which is a 14-day window where both cases and deaths are in decline in our area. Meaning, per the data, we have no reason to leave stay in place. But there are, of course, a number of other factors that go into that decision. And what I would offer to you as a metaphor is the speed limit. And if we wanted to eliminate all traffic deaths in Minneapolis, we would make the speed limit 5 miles an hour. But that's going to really limit mobility. So what governing officials, what our governor and others are trying to factor in is movement, freedom, and risk. And give them grace as they do that. And as, Lord willing, we continue to increase the speed limit over the coming months, we'll move in a progression towards full, unrestricted corporate worship. Okay, here's my spiritual exhortation to you. Patience. Patience. There was a time when I graduated from college where I considered getting into making alcohol. I had a family member who was making wine, and I had friends who were getting into brewing craft beer. And if you know anything about making alcohol or kombucha, right, there is a fermentation process that the elements, the raw materials, must go through in order to produce the drink at the end. And if you shortcut that process and pull out of fermentation too soon, what you're left with is a beverage that's pretty much undrinkable. It's bitter and it's far from what you intended to make. I think that's a helpful picture of what's going on. I believe the Lord has us in a fermentation process where some of the elements that made up our church and Christianity as a whole are being transformed and changed into something far better. And so what I would exhort you to do is be patient. The fermentation process is not yet complete. And if we will be patient and let this fermenting season that the Lord has us in reach its full effect, then when we do get back together and we do celebrate, there will be not the bitterness of division and anxiety and fear, but there will be the sweetness of patience, faith, and unity. That's what I'm longing for us, for the Lord to complete his work in us in this season. So listen, I love you, I miss you, and I'm praying for you. And Lord willing, I'll see you face to face soon.